welcome to today's webinar on organizational design by EDGY and QualiWare. I'm just gonna share the full screen. My name is, for those who don't know me, I am Goebl. I'm a sales executive and senior business analyst with CloseReach. CloseReach is actually an IT and business solution company in Ottawa, Canada. We are QualiWare's strategic partner, specializing in enterprise architecture, business process management, and compliance. So the goal for today's webinar, the reason why we did this webinar, we wanted to have people from multiple practices, such as enterprise designers, organizational designers, EDGY and QualiWare practitioners, enterprise architects, to be in one room. And the goal for that was to cross-promote how you could use, the concepts of EDGY and QualiWare together for the better organizational design. So let's dive into the actual agenda. We got excellent speakers today. We have EDGY presentation done by Wolfgang Goebl and Milan Günther from Intersection Group. Wolfgang and Milan, actually, they started the EDGY movement a few years back, and I'm grateful for having them here. And then we have Kevin Bowles. Kevin Bowles is an enterprise architecture product owner in QualiWare. He will be doing the live demo of the actual EDGY content in QualiWare and showing you how you could maximize that for organizational design and the other use cases. And now we're going to have a Q&A session. Now, if there are any questions at any point, just let me know in the chat. I will be monitoring chat and we'll be addressing them as we go along with the presentation. Wolfgang, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
So the screen sharing, no. Oh.
We can see your screen.
First of all, thanks for the invitation. It's always exciting to talk to people from the other side of this big ocean. So for me, this is always a special situation to be in contact with all of you. Thanks for the invite, really, QualiWare. And I started my career as an enterprise architect in 2006 at Austrian largest bank. And back then I was in the mid of my 30s. That was quite exciting, because now I'm in charge to architect enterprises. That's powerful. I mean, the salary was really good. And so this felt quite mighty. After some years and some mergers and some changes in the company, I came to the conclusion, oh, maybe some other people are also architecting the enterprise, and maybe I don't have the impact I thought I had as an enterprise architect, because enterprise and architecture both are quite huge terms. And so after maybe 15, 16 years, I found I was a bit desperate, right? And still most companies I see in Austria and probably around the world still run on ill-modularized application landscapes, on hundreds of thousands of applications, 10,000s of interfaces. So this idea of loose coupling and simplicity, all these architectural principles are almost absent, if we're honest, in the IT landscapes, at least of all companies I've seen. And the big question is why. I mean, enterprise architecture has been around for decades or so. Are we totally unsuccessful? I mean, that's a bit provocative. I know many enterprise architects in the room, but how come that even after 4 decades, we still have companies running on such weakly designed enterprises? And we have some reason. The reason why we created EDGY was that we think that's not satisfactory of any kind, and that the reason is not the technological reason in that case. So one reason might be that enterprise architecture, the name is called enterprise, but still, if we're honest, architecture is seen as purely technical. I know there's business architecture guild, and the business architecture layer, processes, capabilities, and so on. But we as enterprise architects are still perceived as part of IT. So it's a technology domain, but the reasons that we have this weakly designed IT landscapes and enterprises, companies, so I'm also quite critical, as we have a quite critical view on the state of the design of the whole enterprise, not only on the IT structure. So one reason might be that architecture is a technology domain and perceived as a technology domain. And then we can say, okay, how come? So why are we perceived as a technology domain? Maybe one reason is that we usually, most of us work somewhere in the IT department, report to the CIO or something like that. So it's still more related to software architecture, to application architecture. And over time, what emerged is some languages, meta models, and we enterprise architects love our meta models, right? We have this TOGAF content meta model on the right side, I think, with 25 elements. On the left side, we have Archimate, and I like the language. It's just big, yeah. And usually the result with our big, maybe bloated meta models, that is Archimate, you can model everything, yeah, until the node and the hardware component and so on. So it's more targeted architecture for architects. And usually where we fail as enterprise architects is to communicate those models to the business side. So I've seen so many enterprise architecture models, Archimate diagrams, TOGAF diagrams, UML. Yeah, IT is heavy in meta models and in modeling languages. It has a long tradition, but business people are not engineers usually, and that leads typically to diagrams that might be complete, overly complex. I mean, this is a real-world example. I blurred it a bit, but you have some processes, some business architecture on the bottom, and some IT stuff on the top, and some interfaces and so on. And we must be honest enough that we usually don't make it to the business side. So it's our architecture. We create the architecture diagrams, even if there are business elements in it, capabilities or something like that, processes. Business people don't really care because it's them. It's not us. It's not our architecture. And we believe that's one of the root cause. Yeah? Business architecture should be truly owned by business and co-designed between business and IT people. And I've seen, at least maybe we all have seen, way too many ugly, complex diagrams, uncommon language, everything called management, like in capability maps, perceived as technical. That's how they perceive us, IT-centered and so on. So the business, like this lady here, says, okay, what shall I do with this diagram? I don't know what those people want from me. I hope they can take good care of their IT. It's their stuff. It's not our stuff. So even after those 40 years, the topic of business IT alignment, yeah, we know that, yeah, that's a huge term. It's like a cliche. I would call it a business IT chasm. Maybe it's huge. Yeah, we've seen that. Enterprise architecture lives in IT only. So at least that's my point of view. I've never seen it really architect enterprises, including organizations. So today's topic is organizational design, not enterprise architecture. So I will do the bridge between organization and IT in a couple of minutes. And that all leads to the fact that enterprise architects have a very limited impact on their enterprise. Big decisions are made somewhere else, big mergers, new products, reorganization, all of the big changes are not usually triggered by enterprise architects, but by executives maybe, or by product designers, so that outside of the IT tower. So the name enterprise architecture for me is I'm maybe a bit too much for what we really do. It's more IT. And the result here, that's also what we all know, right? We have we blame the other side game. So business loves to blame IT because it's too expensive, it's too slow, you can't change it, it never works, and so on. And vice versa, IT says, we don't get what you want from us. All the requirements, we don't understand them. And this communication gap between those two sides is a huge problem. And we believe that that's the root cause why IT application landscapes are as they are today, why enterprises are usually awkward. That's the term we like to use. And
Wolfgang,
business,
are you able
yes?
to minimize the Teams screen? Because
okay.
it does, yeah.
You see that?
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So they can't take accountable for the architecture. What we say, they should take accountable for their business architecture. Business architecture is not IT, of course not, but they are not architects, right? They are not trained. So the question is, how can we overcome that? What needs to be done to enable a true co-design between business and IT aspects and so on? And we have today two aspects, two things we want to change with EDGY, and the implementation in QualiWare supports this change. First of all, redefine the enterprise architecture role from a top-down technology architecture person who creates some Archimate whatever diagrams that then are implemented in software top-down with only little business IT alignment all too often, to more of a facilitation role. So it's more about soft factors and let them to do their design, for example. So it's more a facilitation. They know their business, they know their capabilities, they know their processes. Maybe you know the software architecture better, or the software technologies, but it's their IT applications. It should belong to the business side, and you facilitate and mediate between those people. So that's only a simple example. I've seen, I'm sure you all are familiar with capability modeling. I've seen so many flawed approaches, and the key reason I've seen it so often is that people creating the capability model do that in some ivory tower, and they don't take this loop here. So what we want to see is that the person, the new style enterprise architect, is a communicative person, social skills, facilitates, goes to all of the stakeholders and let them own their capability models. I've had that once in my career, that the head of a business department, he modeled his and of his team's capabilities without me at a certain point of time. So it's their capability model. It's not only like a drawer where we align our IT stuff. It's a true collaborative co-design of these capability models. It's not done top-down by the ivory tower. That's only one example. And the second thing, and you will see it in the EDGY demo, we believe that the only thing that can connect disciplines, the only thing that can connect business with IT, people with very different mindset, is art and beauty. So my slogan I like to use is enterprise architecture as usable, maybe as beautiful as an iPhone, as simple and clear to use as an iPhone. So with EDGY, we want to reduce the noise. We want to focus on the elements that really matter and co-design them with the with the business people. So it's no longer about the complex language, complex diagrams done by a small group of enterprise architects. It's about a true collaborative modeling, and foundation and the prerequisite to do that is a simple language. So to do that, you need a simple modeling language. That's a sneak preview. I will talk about EDGY in the next 10 minutes, but that's the first point where you get in contact with EDGY. We say you need only 4 elements, and those 4 elements, you can't argue against them. You have people performing activities that are used, and these activities they use and create objects like IT, servers or machines or buildings and raw material and so on. So those are objects to achieve outcomes. So finally, we say, okay, people, and that can be employees in the company, people can be customers. They also achieve outcomes. They want to get something done in their life. They want to use our product, drive from A to B and so on. So this model is universal for everything that goes on in and around the enterprise. And you can model enterprises with only those 4 elements, and you can't argue about them. We as enterprise architects love to argue about meta model, and is this a business function? Is this a business capability or a business collaboration? Archimate has, I think, 50 or something elements. We have 4. That's maybe a bit too simple. So I will come closer. We have some instantiations of them. So how can we make this work a truly collaborative enterprise architecture approach, where we invite and where people are keen to work together with us? And so what we do, and that's the motivation behind enterprise design, is when we ask people, why is Amazon so successful? Is it only because of microservices, adaptive microservices architecture. So these are answers we get in our webinars, and we do that often. We get always the same answers, right? So they are so successful. Yes, they have a powerful brand. They have a super cool user experience. They do a good service design, information architecture. They have efficient processes. They have good leadership, probably. Maybe they don't treat their employees well. I don't know. Yeah, so some people say so. They have this total focus on customer orientation. And that means that enterprises like Amazon must be seen by various lenses and elements. And in this text, in these terms here, you find aspects from architecture. That's the blue building in EDGY. Architecture means how are we operating, like processes, like IT. That's the architecture. Yeah? You must have an efficient efficient logistic processes. They're good in products. Yeah, so their product, their shop, yeah, and they sell, and the Amazon Web Services and so on. We know their product. They have a cool brand. So the orange here is the brand. They have a clear identity. Green is the identity facet in EDGY. So that's a sneak preview again. So that means they are clear about what they are. We don't need to love. Everybody needs to love it, but I think it's quite clear what they are and what they stand for. And they provide a good user experience. That's the experience facet. And of course, they have a strong organization. So they are organized in a certain way that they can run their processes. And these are the facets. So now we are moving to the EDGY part of this short presentation. With EDGY, we see those 4 base elements. Yeah, people performing activities to achieve outcomes using objects, only those 4 elements. And we use like flashlights, colorful flashlights, a green, a blue, and a red flashlights. And when I use the blue one, I ask the question, how are we operating and what are we capable of achieving? How are our business processes, our IT systems? The red facet looks from the angle, what is our role in people's life and maybe in society? And identity, that's the big topic. Why do we exist? What is it what we want? What matters to us? Who are we, right? So this is deep topic. And we use these 3 facets and look at only those 3 base elements. And that's the complete picture. So that's the whole EDGY language. We don't call it a meta model. Right? It should be a language in the deepest sense. We want people to use the same term like process. Yeah, and we worked hard to find terms that are used in business, yeah, where we can connect to business people. We don't use value streams, for example, because that's quite abstract for people outside of the business architecture, ivory tower. Capabilities, for example, is in the blue facet. Organization, we all know, a team of people that works together to create something, that's clear. Purpose is the main element in identity, for example. And in the intersections here, so these overlaps are super important for our work, yeah, because we say, finally, with EDGY, what we want to have, we want the disciplines from the facets. Quite often you have specialized people, and the enterprise architects are usually coming more from the blue facet. Yeah? They optimize IT, which is an asset. They optimize processes using these IT assets, and they help the organization. So usually as a enterprise architect, you work on IT assets, capabilities, processes somehow. You work with the product people, that's it. But experienced people are already quite alien, and they are also a discipline. They have their journey concepts, they have their conferences and so on. And with EDGY, we want that everybody takes his or her finger and moves along those lines to the intersection. So that means in my user experience design, I find out a certain task and how is it related to this product and which capabilities do we need. But I have an example for that in a couple of minutes. So that in this short presentation, it's only a quick overview of maybe some of the most important elements in those EDGY language. We believe purposes. Companies should be clear about their purposes, and there can be some higher level purposes, emotional purposes. Yeah, for a railway company, for example, we want to revolutionize transportation in Europe. We want to help people create better enterprises. That's our purpose, and so on. So that's close to the mission statement we are used to. Purpose is similar, but with purpose modeling, we want to be clearer and have hierarchies of purposes, for example. But that's maybe don't have too much time to elaborate on that element. And then task, so now we go to the red facet. Yeah, the task is an outcome element. That's what this person here, so this guy here wants to visit his girlfriend in another city. And so that's the task. I want to visit my loved one. And if this railway company is lucky enough, he buys a ticket and uses this product, and the train company needs this capability to perform this product. So task is very much about the customer perspective. What is it? What people want to get done? And that's a simple EDGY diagram that shows the power and the interdisciplinarity, the simplicity, if you want. And that's the way to nudge maybe and to connect design disciplines across those facets. So let's imagine we have a person, Alice, right? And she wants to visit the grandma. So that's already a simple EDGY statement. A person has a task. So Alice wants to visit her grandma. That's simple. And that's part of her journey, long weekend. She has a long weekend, and in this journey, she has many tasks. Maybe she wants to go to a restaurant or whatever. So this task is only part of her journey. To do that, she uses our channel. So channel is also an element in the red facet. So she uses the website of a railway company maybe. And finally, she books a ticket and uses the product high-speed train to Bern. So now we moved from the red facet to the intersection. And on the other side, then that's where we architects come into play. Yeah? We connect our capabilities, our capability model to the product. So we assign, we have a relationship between product requires, of course, a ticket sales capability. And that ticket sales capability needs an organization. In EDGY, we have organization as a modeling element, but we say organizations has a capability. And this organization pursues a certain purpose, another relation in our language. And what you can see here, the topic today is organizational design in EDGY. Yeah? So this, how is IT and organizational design related? I have a clear opinion. I think in the future, organization design, how do we structure our organization into teams, should be seamlessly done together with the modularization of the IT and in a capability-first approach. Yeah? So what you see here is a product requires a set of capabilities. Of course, you need more to deliver a high-speed train. So think about your capability first and which product you need, which capabilities you need to produce which product, and then think about the org structure you need. That's one of the tricks we use in EDGY. And then we move to the orange facet. I haven't talked too much about this one. That's the brand. So that's the Eurospeed maybe. So our organization builds this brand, and the brand embodies, that's how we call it, a product. And the brand appears in this journey. So that's what we want to see in EDGY, that these are EDGY sentences. Yeah, so statements where we want to model across specialized disciplines in a language everybody can relate to. And what we see is a big table. Yeah? You have people from all facets, UXers, you have maybe executives from the business, you have IT architects, software architects in the same room at the same table, and they have their EDGY shapes, yeah, like game pieces on a game board. And then they can finally connect the elements, right? The architects come with capabilities and IT stuff behind it, and then they can discuss and they have a clear terminology. That's the idea of EDGY. So I skip a few slides because we want to see it in real life. Maybe that's the final slide from my side, and then I'm excited, of course, to see the demo. That's also a nice way how you can relate elements from the green, from the identity facet, the blue, the architecture facet, and the red. Yeah, so you have a passenger, and he or she has certain tasks. So you can also say that's part of his journey. Yeah? So he starts to dream of far away, to have some trip ideas, make a plan, and book a ticket, and so on. And finally, he goes to the station, get on the train, board the train, drives the train, and so on. So that's the perspective of the passenger. That's his experience. That's why it's in this red facet. And in the center lane here, in the blue lane, these are the capabilities. Yeah? The capabilities the railway company needs to support this part of this journey, of his journey, of this task. For example, in this top right segment here, the railway company needs to prepare the train, they need to drive the train, they need to provide the train restaurant services, they need to trade energy, they need the energy for the train. A whole lot of stuff is needed to move a train, of course. Yeah, a lot of capabilities that are related to certain tasks in the journey. So we relate in this sector of this Milky Way map, that's how we call it, the Milky Way map, the capabilities to the tasks. And in the center, we have the purposes driving those companies. Yeah? So they say, okay, punctuality is important, safety, these are purposes. That's us, right? It's part of Austrian Railways. I was working for them for a couple of years. So punctuality was everything. So that says a lot about the identity. German Bahn, for example, Deutsche Bahn, it doesn't care about punctuality. It's a huge difference between Austria and Germany, because it's part of the identity of Austrian Railways that punctuality is everything, for example. So that means in this Milky Way map, what you can do, you can relate elements from all facets in these sectors. And you can also add some flows later. If you want to learn more, there are plenty of webinars of our website on the Milky Way and other stuff. Yeah, so I mean, that's my part. I'm not sure if there are any questions about EDGY so far.
Looks fine for now in the chat, but let us know if you have any questions or any comments. Thank you very much, Wolfgang. I do have a question. For those enterprise architects and business architects that are currently using traditional frameworks, what would be number one, maybe name me one or two benefits of why people should be considering EDGY?
My experience is that you increase your impact on the enterprise. I've met too many, where's my example? I've met too many enterprise architects who complained, I don't have the impact I need to. They don't care about my architecture diagrams. They make big decisions. They never listen to me. Most enterprise architects I know are somehow frustrated that they never get the budget for a transformation of the IT landscape, that their best architectures are never implemented. So I think the USP is to increase your impact on the enterprise and increase the amount of change you can actually make happen. I've seen so many enterprise architecture initiatives that only maintain the repository of IT artifacts. Yeah? You can have a QualiWare tool. If you only use it as a repository and you don't trigger any changes with this repository, then you're a librarian. You're not an enterprise architect. I mean, I think that's the main benefit we want to bring. And maybe that's the example. Right? We want to have those people to be close with those people, to have trust with them and enable them to do the co-design, which finally is a translation between the IT and the organizational stuff. Yeah, so I think it's the only way to make real enterprise architecture happen, to be honest.
Right, so this essentially goes on top of whatever they're already using as far as the EA frameworks and the other items. Right.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So with this sentence, for example, this EDGY sentence, this simple one, we know that that's kind of high level, right? And for example, we could say ticket sales, you can model a process. You can use BPMN, for example, as a modeling language only for the sales process. We know there are specialized modeling languages. UXs also have it, for example. Yeah, there are many modeling languages, and what we want to be is the glue between those languages. So if you want to use Archimate or whatever repository tool or a CMDB where you manage your lower level, your system architecture assets, feel free to do that. If you want to use UML activity diagrams to specialize details in an application, but with EDGY, we want to connect the application with the capability, with the product, with the task on a layer everybody can relate to.
Excellent. This is great, Wolfgang. And getting to the point of connecting all of those things together, QualiWare would allow you to do that. It would actually allow you to connect an Archimate. It would allow you to connect some other, facets and capabilities with EDGY content as well. So now I'm going to pass it over to my friend Kevin Bowles, who will be demonstrating QualiWare live. And Wolfgang, you're most welcome to, comment essentially and provide maybe some description about those templates that we will be showcasing on EDGY.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Kevin, I think you could just share and present. Give a chance to.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Before I share my screen, I'm picking up some of the themes, which has been very interesting. The topic of co-design. Do you start with EDGY or do you start with something else and then use EDGY? I think those are some of the things that I can also discuss a little bit during the presentation of QualiWare. But just as a way of introduction, what is QualiWare? Well, or who is QualiWare, should I say? We're a leading enterprise architecture and compliance management solution, and we've been active in the market for 32 years now, I believe, 12 years of which I've been fortunate enough to be working with QualiWare. And part of our focus is on introducing innovative features into our tool. And one of those innovative features, you could say, would be adding support for EDGY. And we've supported EDGY for, it's just over a year now. Just to let you know, our new version of QualiWare is actually releasing soon, and that supports EDGY 23, which has enriched connections and labels. But over and above that, our new version also supports the ability to generate EDGY diagrams using AI. So that's quite exciting as well, where you can kind of start with a blank canvas and use AI to help you generate models. I wish I could show you some of those things, but that would be something that we'll obviously save for the future. So today I'll provide an overview of EDGY in QualiWare and just a kind of starter, you could say, of what is possible in QualiWare. Okay, so let me just share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. And please do stop me if you have any questions. I'm sure Kirill will you can just interrupt me.
Absolutely.
I might not see any hands. Cool. So one of the major benefits of using a tool like QualiWare is the fact that you can build relationships between models and objects. And I think that was seen clearly when you look at the Milky Way, and I'll obviously get to that now. But when you're working with something on a piece of paper or in a spreadsheet, it becomes very difficult to kind of leverage the value of those relationships. And when we speak about things like co-design, being able to use a tool like this as well in a workshop with the business and start to see the value immediately, not having to wait a month for a document to be created, but also being able to immediately access other elements from your organization without having to kind of go back to somebody. I think that's very powerful. I mentioned that there's a lot to show, and there is a lot to show in QualiWare. So just just in terms of positioning it, this is a kind of I suppose advanced view of what you could see in QualiWare as an enterprise architect, as a business analyst, as a compliance manager, as an enterprise designer. And there's a lot of great features in QualiWare, one of them being what we call our governance workflow engine. And our governance workflow engine is one of those kind of cornerstones of our solution, which encourages collaboration and ownership and accountability, all of those things which are so important in the modern organization. So
Kevin,
this is
we do have a question.
Yes, please go. Please go.
A question for both Kevin and Wolfgang. A question from Nathan. How is decision-making and strategy development support improved specifically at the intersection points between language elements? Asking about this in a context of designing and managing integrated, agile intelligence systems that roll up decision support concerns into a variety of operations level interfaces.
That is a very long question. I'm going to quickly read it again in the chat.
Yes. I've read it already.
Oh, okay. Do you want to go ahead and answer that?
Yeah. Strategy is crucial, as we know. Usually what we see today when we discuss strategy is that you have executives and they manage a set of projects, a project portfolio. With EDGY, we think we can complement the strategy process. So all the tools they use, SWOT and multi-project management, KPIs, goals, and so on, are important, but they get much more powerful if you use EDGY as a language to make the goals clearer, because then you can talk about it's our goal to improve this process and that capability and this task and this product. So it makes the strategy process much more clearer, right? I'm not sure if meeting in the intersections is where strategy happens. I think strategy is about making the right set of changes across all of the facets. So but you must be aware. So it's our strategy to get a better brand, to increase our identity, to make our identity change it a bit, or something like that. Then you can use the facets and point with your finger and say, I want to get better here and there until next year, and then it gets strategic. That's my take on strategy and EDGY.
All right, thank you.
Cool, perfect, thank you. So the reason that I'm starting with this view of my desktop page, you might ask yourself, well, why is Kevin not jumping straight to the enterprise design and the EDGY framework and things like that? It's because of the value of those relationships that I mentioned earlier. The fact that you can have a full repository, a complete repository of information for your organization, all your processes and all your different architecture elements, but you can still have an opportunity to extend that further with something like EDGY. And that's something that I really want to emphasize as well. So don't worry, I won't be going through all of these. I'll just jump straight to the enterprise design dashboard or workspace. So these workspaces in QualiWare, you have the freedom to configure them and customize them and label them as you see fit. This is just a standard enterprise design workspace that I've created to basically just to demo this to you. So a lot of these things will be familiar to you from the presentation that we just had now. But you also have a lot of the kind of creature comforts that you would expect from a solution like QualiWare, the ability to create relationships between your components and your different elements from EDGY with the rest of your architecture and vice versa. You can, I believe that you can start with EDGY. I don't think you have to have an existing architecture in place. I started my career as a business analyst, and if I wish I had something like EDGY back then, I think it would have really helped me engaging with my stakeholders. So having said that, if I, for example, let's start maybe with the facets, and again, this will most likely be familiar to everybody from the presentation. There's two different ways, or three different ways actually, for me to get to the information that I want to get to. So I have here a view of the different facets here, and I can actually view relevant information for this model. This is what we call the analyzing and improving layout. And this is something that you can also, is highly configurable. There's a lot of blank spaces, I know, but of course you can populate that with information as well. So the things like ownership, who owns this model from an enterprise design perspective, who in the organization is responsible for this model itself, because this as a kind of framework itself should have ownership. I can now, for example, let's say, for example, I want to click on architecture. I can click on architecture. That will now show me all of those boards that are associated with that facet. I can now, let's say, for example, click on the capability board, and that will now drill down into the, or decompose, should I say, into the actual model itself, or the diagram of that capability board. So again, you can still see this, you can see there's this kind of consistent decomposition or standard layout that we're going through as we decompose through the models. What I can also do here, I can expand that model, and now I can see obviously in quite a bit more detail, but I can select individual elements from this diagram to get more information on it. So any associated content, people who have responsibility, etc. I can also edit the diagram. And this is, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we're going to be introducing in the next version is the ability to generate these kinds of models using AI. So here's our QualiWare web modeler, and the web modeler is consistent across all of the different types of models that you could obviously create or edit. There's a lot of cool things you can do here. So I can directly edit information. I can drag things around, of course. I can import as well. If I have existing information, whether it's in Visio or in Excel and things like that, it's very easy for me to get that information into QualiWare. I can also browse for existing objects in the repository. I can see here from the meta model, because of course the meta model decide, what objects are available for me here. I can view all of the capabilities, edgy capabilities that exist. But I can also add relationships for non-edgy elements if I want to. Might not want to do that initially, but it's something that you can do in the future that allows you to, of course, create that hybrid architecture view of your organization. Any questions so far? Can I continue? Chance for me to have some tea as well.
We are good for now.
Perfect.
And that could be some process model, for example, right? So BPMN or other examples, right? So that's exactly what I love to see, is to have EDGY as those clue language. And my experience is that executives and business people, when they own capability maps like this one, when they were part of this huge elicitation process and communication process, and then they own them. So they say, yeah, that's my capability, and I define a name together with you all. That makes a huge difference, because then they own this model. And then you, maybe when you have more specialized diagrams like BPMN or whatever models, IT, more closer to IT, having the connection might only be interesting for the specialized discipline. And so that it's a beautiful way to show the power of EDGY as a clue language, and that's the idea. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so what I'll just do, I'll just exit from here. And of course, it is worth mentioning that using our governance workflow engine, if you make any changes to it, you can create new revisions. People will be notified as well if changes are made. I could raise change requests and all of that. So those kind of creature comforts for anyone who's familiar with QualiWare, if all of that standard native functionality does work, and I encourage people to use that functionality when working with EDGY. So if I just jump back now, I can just quickly, let's go back to home here. So having shown what I just showed you now, I could also just the same click on the elements view, and I can see here, of course, all of those elements and those relationships between all of those different elements. What I can do here is I can also click on capability, and that will now show me a listing of all of the capabilities that exist or have been created so far. So I can skip through some of these. I just edited one of them. You can see IT operations here. I've assigned an owner and a responsible individual. But this is interesting because this is assigning ownership with your kind of standard architecture models and your standard architecture elements. So that's, again, just emphasizing the fact that EDGY framework in QualiWare is almost a seamless implementation, because it's designed to operate with all of those other architecture elements. I can see I've created some links here as well, just to create some of those important relationships.
Kevin?
Yep.
We do have a couple of questions. I'm going to
Sure,
let you
please.
enjoy the tea for the next 30 seconds.
Thank you.
Thomas is asking a question. If we mix languages and change an element in one that is replicated in the other, will the change show somehow? Say an EDGY process that breaks down to an Archimate process, and I then change the Archimate process.
If the relationship has been defined, yes, it will. As long as the association is being created and the relationship is there, yes, absolutely. Of course, it depends on your rules around, what changes get published, if things get automatically published or they go through a review cycle. But yes, those changes would be reflected.
Yeah, and QualiWare fully supports that kind of functionality, and
absolutely,
even in analytics and query capabilities as well. Right. Another question is Francois from GAC. Please answer at the appropriate time during the presentation. If an organization is heavily invested in using QualiWare and have many business constructs built, how would they transition to EDGY? Is it a heavy lift, complete redesign? So we are not ready to launch into another type of construct. Can we onboard later on?
You might find that, it's an interesting decision to make if you decide to replace something with EDGY as opposed to enhancing what you already have. I think, of course, you want to reduce complexity. You don't want to introduce complexity unnecessarily. because EDGY is supported natively inside of QualiWare, I mean, Kirill, you also mentioned as well, in terms of the scripting and language and things like that, there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to do a migration internally within QualiWare, as an internal project, you could say. But it would be more about getting an understanding of, the reasons for maybe migrating from one specific framework to another, as opposed to maybe using them both together, because each of them may deliver a certain set of values to you.
Yeah. Maybe less from the tool perspective, more of the idea from EDGY is very much about coherence between isolated designs. So what we always see is that you have service designs, UX designs, journeys from one discipline, process maps that not often make it to reality. So the process department, sometimes they have specialized disciplines. So I don't know in your case, Francois, if you have everything in QualiWare already, then congratulations. But usually companies have the processes in some process tool and some. So I've never seen a company who managed to have everything in a single tool. Then congratulations. But it's about this kind of coherence, and those designs usually are not coherent. So have some processes that are not incoherent with the user stories and so on. So it's more of an iterative process. When I do a new assignment, I have a look at all the stuff that is around, and I find millions, not millions, but thousands probably, of inconsistencies between separated designs. So it's more a question of how can I connect them, find inconsistencies between those models, and model the connector, and maybe the next step of a better coherence in EDGY. So I think it's an iterative approach. It's not a big bang. You need to migrate everything. It's not a one-to-one technical migrations. It's making isolated designs coherent.
And Francois, I just followed up saying we are just starting, so ensuring we can go this route whenever we have more capacity.
Yes, absolutely. Sure.
Excellent. All right, Kevin.
And also just on that topic as well, just considering the fact that because, ultimately you would be able to do things like create those strategy models, those transformation roadmaps, digitalization plans, and all of those kinds of things, and have your kind of elements that you've created in EDGY and make them be visible in those models. And that's important. I very much view it as an opportunity to enrich the architecture for people who already have an architecture capability, or in other organizations, and we've seen a lot of this in practice and at some of the in the intersection events, where people start from scratch with it as a consulting approach to engaging with the business or with their customers. So it's I think it introduces a lot of opportunity, and QualiWare obviously kind of facilitates that by offering the ability to use or leverage the EDGY framework in the tool, but also the ability to extend that functionality further as well. So there's value to be had from the framework itself, but there's also value to be had from the fact that it's obviously in a tool that kind of operates well with other frameworks and methodologies. It is worth also just showing an example of that, and that is the fact that if I look at the one of the EDGY capabilities of IT operations, here I can start to enrich the content, and we speak about co-design, we speak about business taking ownership of information and business taking ownership and accountability of content that is relevant for them. And this is a great example where you can encourage your stakeholders, whether it's in person or obviously digitally, to kind of interact with the repository and collaborate and populate all of these empty blocks. We have no description here. We don't know how important it is. We don't know what the maturity is of this capability. These are things that the business can start to do, and they can start to take ownership of these things. Our IT manager should be consistently looking at this and saying, oh, okay, there's these changes that people are recommending. What resources are we using? What information, who's being consulted? What services do we impact? So this is a really great opportunity where, and I really always emphasize the fact that no one does enterprise design or enterprise architecture or things like that for the sake of doing it. it's often a means to an end. And if you understand what that end is, you can really start to generate value. So the more kind of information you put into it, the more insight you'll be able to get out through the analysis functionality that we have in the tool as well. So then I just wanted to quickly jump back here. What I've done is I've just done a little bit of a sneaky window that I've opened here to save some time. And what I wanted to show here is if I didn't wait too long, here we go. So what I've done here is, it might look a little bit busy because there's a lot of objects here, but I keep on speaking about the relationships between all of these different objects, that it needs to tell a story, that you need to understand what the impact will be, why things are important, what will happen if something goes wrong, what opportunities do we have if we pursue a specific path. What I've done here as an example is I've taken that whole Milky Way view. So if I just jump back here, if I go to the Milky Way here, and I've basically expanded the Milky Way to show me some context. I want to see context of these because this is still just a picture at the end of the day. So I have a very busy kind of view here, but what I've done is I've expanded this view to show me, okay, that same IT operations capability that we were just looking at now, show me the relationships. It's associated, it has an association with a product. There's a responsibility of the IT manager. The CIO owns this. It employs the IT organization. So you can really start to get more insight into those forward and reverse relationships that you would expect to see. So you can start to do that analysis and kind of plan and strategize. I can then go further and say, oh, okay, this breaks down into a booking management platform, which is an asset, and I can expand that further. Of course, I've just created a few examples here, but you can imagine the possibilities of what you can do with this when you've really defined those relationships to identify where the priorities are in my business. Right.
And this is a very powerful tool, right? This is
absolutely
true showcasing the power of relationships and QualiWare's corporate memory and how it's all connected together.
And this is also great, again, we come back to designing and working with business stakeholders. You don't have to pre-prepare a lot of this. You can interact with your stakeholders and leverage the benefits of EDGY with them, as opposed to having to have a very kind of stand back approach or siloed approach. That collaboration really is key, that we always encourage. There's also some, and I know you don't have too much time left, but one thing I did want to show very quickly, if I just go to, I think diagram domain should work here. Oh no, sorry, wrong model. While I quickly open this, maybe if there's any other questions.
Yes, there were a number of questions about the functionality of QualiWare. Nathan, we'll try to address them at the end. If no, I'm going to follow up with you on this. There's questions about, modeling and using QualiWare for operational simulation engines and integration with some other tools. Most of it is yes, Nathan. I will get back to you in a separate email if that's okay as well. And Kevin actually is replying. Kevin O'Rourke is replying back. Other ways to bring this data to non-modeling stakeholders as well. One of the questions that Nathan had, definitely yes, the QualiWare collaboration license allows business users to access the information. I'm just going to go through. Thomas has a question. Can I right-click over whatever function is reuse an Archimate element as an EDGY element so the object ID is the same for the purposes of reuse and non-create and duplicate elements? Yes, you can do that. This would allow seamless change within languages, so that would be great. Yes, for sure. Reusing is one of the key elements in QualiWare, and Kevin, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, something that I often do as well is based on my role or the framework that I'm working in. What I like to do is use my menus to say, for example, let's say I'm looking at processes, and I might say, for example, I might have an Archimate kind of view here, and obviously you can view things from that perspective, from that notation's perspective. You have complete control to create those kinds of views for yourself. There's no restriction. Using the same ID, the only thing you obviously have to be careful of things like that is around your governance workflows, and you might have different people or different stakeholders that are responsible for those different languages or those different notations. But I think that's a kind of a case-by-case basis. I suppose it's worth looking into those kinds of things.
All right. We do have one more question from Walter. Walter Sokirko. Does EDGY help with addressing Conway's law that says the structure of a system is determined by the communication patterns of the people who design it? This means that the way in which people communicate and collaborate when designing a system will have a direct impact on the structure of the system itself. If I need to change organization before changing IT systems.
This is Walter. One of the problems I've run into is that I've looked at the IT system and said this changes need to be made, but then because the organization structure doesn't reflect the system that I envision, the change never occurs, right? Like, let's say you want to rationalize your ITSM system and your department organization has 4 IT systems, all supported by 4 different sets of people, and each set of people says, well, you're not changing my system. I'm not going to give up my system, and therefore the change never happens to get a coherent IT system across the organization.
So yeah, from my side, a clear yes, and that's a big driver behind this idea. And we propose a capability-first approach to make capabilities the true business components, which include IT stuff. So people think of them as an orchestration of people and assets to achieve outcomes. That's how we define them. That makes them the perfect components, and you bring it to the business side. So then architecture is no longer done modularization in the IT side. So we do that by capability first. Organization second.
Thank you.
And I've added a presentation I gave for Meetup, so I think the story is in there.
And if I can just quickly close by just on my side by just kind of also throwing my my 2 cents in there, is that one of the things that I've seen, and also by attending the events, I think I've had more exposure to this as well, is that it's also about encouraging different stakeholders to get involved. When you start to get different stakeholders involved from different levels of the organization, I think you get a lot more value contribution towards the kind of accuracy or the relevance of your architecture. And that's really, for me, what it's about. It's about getting as many people as involved as possible, especially business people who might be a little bit kind of, I don't really want to get involved with that. But it's worth getting involved, like you say, from a capability perspective. And I'm a firm believer in capability first as well. So yeah, I'm sorry I know we've run out of time, I think, but I'm really excited to for everyone to be able to have an opportunity to see the new version. I'm sure that keep an eye open for that as well. And all of those extra features that we're adding in, and we really do believe in the framework. We use the framework ourselves, so we're flying that flag. So thank you so much for the opportunity to show you EDGY and QualiWare.
This has been a great discussion. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I think a lot of good questions, a lot of great thoughts, and hopefully we'll do it again at some point. I dropped in a couple of links about CloseReach, QualiWare, and Intersection Group for you guys to follow, to view more information. Anybody's interested in EDGY or QualiWare demo, let us know, and make sure to sign up for our newsletter and stay tuned for more events.
Thank you. And bye.
Bye. See you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.